Everyone. If you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up.
Yep.
Perfect. So my name is Brandon Bibby. You can just call me Bibby, one of the architects that is working on your memorial project. And today, this is our second session. And as Dean mentioned, we're going to be talking about audience. So today's conversation, I'm joined by our principal, Jadi Amazi, who leads the Public Memory and Memorial Lab. We have Chris Stovall, who is the design director. Myself, I'm a fellow and an architect. Then we have Morgan O'Hara, who is one of our advancement managers. She does a lot of preservation research. Alejandra, who is a senior designer and has led a lot of engagements very similar to what we're going to be talking about today. And then Emily Ebersol, who is also one of our design fellows. So just a quick agenda for today. We're going to have 10 minutes to review what we talked about in the first session. So if you guys remember, that session was focused on context. Then we're going to take 10 more minutes to talk and frame what we're going to talk about today, which is audience. We're going to spend the majority of today's session in the breakout rooms. And then we're going to report back and synthesize for 20 minutes. So a quick overview of the timeline. We mentioned this at the first meeting, but early on, we talked about defining the process and the mission with the Memorial Committee. Right now, we're at the point where we're refining our mission and goals. So this is the second of 3 workshops. The next workshop, which will be March 23rd, will focus on intent and form. So just to recap, the last session, we talked about context and we asked ourselves 3 questions, which were, what are the opportunities and challenges in this context of King's Chapel for a memorial to enslaved persons? We talked about how might a new memorial recontextualize and enrich our understanding of existing memorials? And then how might a new memorial provide an opportunity for reflection upon King's Chapel's past, dialogue in the present, and hope for its future? So from that, we kind of synthesized all the breakout rooms. So I think there was 4 breakout rooms, and we compiled the notes from all of those, and those have or will be shared with all of you. From that, our group then kind of sat with it for a bit, and our team identified what the key takeaways were from that discussion. So here are some of those. We talked about, from everyone's discussion in all of the breakout rooms, the location on the Freedom Trail is seen as an opportunity to demonstrate leadership through growth. We talked about, or we saw that material and programmatic contrast to existing memorials can underscore important differences of new memorial and who is being honored and why. And then we also saw that context of the congregation's spiritual practice should provide a framework for ongoing future-facing provocation. And so with that, our team synthesized that down even further, because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of good feedback, but really what we saw is that all of the comments could really be synthesized further down into 3 categories, which we as the design team are calling the detail, the divine, and the divergence, which all make up the context. So when we talk about detail, we're talking about King's Chapel's involvement with slavery in the North, and we're talking about bringing to light the untold stories erased from history. When we talk about the divine, we're talking about acknowledging the sins of the past and building space for repair and reconciliation for the future. And we're talking about answering the calling of our time to lead according to our covenant. And then when we talk about the divergence, we're talking about away from a flawed narrative of church and slavery, and away from memorials that mark to memorials that engage and inspire. So as we talk today about who the audience is, I want you guys to keep in mind that these 3 things are really the context that the memorial is going to exist in this church. So again, today's session, March 9th, is the second of 3. Our next one is going to be March 23rd, and it's going to be focused on intent and form. So with that, today I want you guys to not really focus on form, what the memorial is going to look like, if it's going to be a marker with names on it, if it's going to be figurative. We know what it's not going to be. We know that it's not going to be that, based off of the feedback that we got from all of you to kind of think of how to diverge away from that. So as we're talking about audience, you're going to have to kind of think broadly about all the possibilities of what this memorial could be. So the new memorial will be front and center for current and future church members. It will become a teaching moment for tourists and other visitors. We're going to talk about how can the memorial remain front and center for church members, and how can it be a resource for education to prompt the curiosity of visitors. So in the breakout rooms, you're going to take 10 minutes and we're going to talk about who the target audience for the memorial project should be. And that's just a brainstorming. You're just going to throw out names. You're going to throw out tourists, current congregation, future congregation, whoever you think should be the focus for the design of this memorial. We're going to talk about it. And then from that, you're going to work with your moderator to kind of prioritize that list to hopefully 4. And from that, we're going to do an exercise that's called a persona exercise. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But from those groups that we identify, we're going to step into those shoes for a second. We're going to take a moment to empathize with someone other than ourselves and try to view what that experience will be of the memorial. So from those perspectives, we're going to look at how often that persona, that audience group, is going to engage with the memorial. We're going to talk about why they've engaged with King's Chapel and how King's Chapel potentially reached out to get them there. And then we're going to talk about why the memorial is important to them. Why is a memorial to enslaved people that were part of King's Chapel important to a visitor to the church? Why is it important to the congregation? Why is it important to a student? We're going to talk about that. And then the last question is, how might the memorial engage the persona physically, emotionally, or spiritually? So just a quick example of that. This is one of Mass's projects called the Newport Festival's Foundation. And here we describe the persona exercise as a human-centered design exercise where user typologies are created based on real users of the space to help understand how design will impact them. So through this exercise, the group that we worked with identified these 4 key audience groups, and they were students, artists, the broader community, and fans and members. Of course, there were many, many more, but these kind of shaped and guided the design. And we have Alejandra here, who is one of our project managers, and she can talk a little bit more about how it's being used now.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Hi, everyone. Good evening and good afternoon. Just to complement what Vivi was already wonderfully saying about this activity, when we ran this with our partner, it was an activity that not only helped us identify these audience group and many others, or in this case, it was actual end users or user groups for this building we ended up working through together, but it also helped us develop and practice that empathy and step into somebody else's shoes for a minute, and then use those personas to make design decisions at this point in the process, just to kind of get some ideation going. This is what we will use these for afterwards. Just make some design decisions that are informed by the experiences and the needs that kind of emerge from this conversation about personas. So that's a little bit of a taste of what we're hopefully getting to with this group tonight. Back to you, Vivi.
Yeah, thank you. And so if you guys remember last time, we talked just briefly about community standards, and we'll kind of talk about these again. So as we're in these breakout rooms, we want everyone to practice empathetic listening. We want you to honor your lived experience and share your experiences, but at the same time, open that up to think about experiences beyond yours for this exercise. We're going to make space for multiple truths. We're going to encourage open participation, and we want you to be present and practice your Zoom etiquette. So with that, we're going to get ready to divide out into our breakout rooms. Does anyone have any questions before we do that? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see hands. Is everyone very excited? All right.
Yes. Good. Always good to see some thumbs up. This is Jadi speaking. Thank you, Bibi and Alejandra, for that introduction. I think that was very clear and very helpful. So I appreciate you all taking the time to walk us through that. I have been over here in the background creating the breakout rooms. So what I'm going to do now is we are going to stop recording. Joy, if you could stop the recording for us, that would be.
Thank you, Todd.
All right. I apologize. I know that the end of the breakout rooms is always so hard to navigate. Inevitably, someone is always in the middle of a sentence and the room closes. But if I am being completely honest and transparent, as someone who has had to moderate many an engagement session, I do like it a little bit better than being in a room with folks, because when you try to get a table to stop talking, they just keep going and they don't listen to the fact that the timer has stopped. So this is much better for those of us that are accustomed to having to facilitate often. I was bouncing around and I heard such great conversations. I appreciate you all so much for taking the time to work through this exercise. For some of you, you might have done something like this before. For others, maybe you've never participated in an empathy exercise quite like this. So I hope that for everyone, there was something to learn and to gain. I would like to invite the moderators of each group to, without giving us, full descriptions, because we only have 7 minutes, just tell us who the personas that you developed were. So if you had like a student and a visitor, or if you had a historian and a local resident, whatever. So moderators, whether it wants to be Mass or KC from each group, just tell us the list of the moderator, of the personas that you developed. And then this group, this audience, you all will get a full report back, later next week of who all we developed together, but we don't have time to go through everyone today. So Morgan, let's start. Morgan and Kathy, and Dean, let's start with your group first, please.
What she said made no sense.
No problem. Yeah, we had a very rich conversation. Of course, there wasn't enough time to get to everyone, but our 4 primary personas that we uplifted to the priority status were visitors, which was inclusive of those on the Freedom Trail, as well as students, K through 12, although also potentially college students were another option there. So visitors, and then worshipers, those on a faith journey, and those could be internal or external to the congregation themselves. Our third was local residents, but with a special attention to communities of color surrounding. And finally, the fourth one was potential congregants, especially families.
Great, thank you so much. Bibi, Chris, and Joy, you all want to go next?
Sure, I'll go. We had a really great discussion. We kind of focused, 2 of our personas were youth, but they were very different personas. One was an African-American young male that we envisioned as walking by King's Chapel regularly, but never actually engaging with the building. Like there's a fear or an intimidation with the building, and he's invited because there's this history program that invited his school. So he's engaging with the first time. Our other youth, she is a seeker of faith. Her grandmother attends King's Chapel. She is learning from her parents and grandparents what it means to be spiritual. So she's engaging with the church. And then our third persona was a parishioner, someone who currently worships at King's Chapel. They attend the church regularly, and how this memorial there is a sense of awe and wonder. We talked about what it means for the church to have awe and wonder, and what it means for the memorial to actually engage with that. So Joy or Chris, is there anything you want to add really quick?
Well, I only that it was a very interesting conversation, and I'm grateful to everybody who participated. There were so many great ideas voiced. It was a pleasure.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Emily, Miguel, Faye. Somebody from your group want to tell us the personas that you developed?
Sure. So our group also had a really interesting conversation, and the four personas that we kind of parsed out, we have two types of visitors. The first is a tourist visitor who's coming from out of town. And the second is more of a familiar tourist. So someone whose mother had brought them, or was a member in the past and had brought them to Mass on Sundays. So there's a level of familiarity with the church already. And then the third was a congregation member, so someone who attends regularly. But it was really interesting. Our group thought that maybe this person wasn't totally sold on the idea of the memorial, or maybe just hasn't really been paying attention and isn't in this committee currently. And then the fourth was going to be youth. We kind of ran out of time because we were having such a great conversation, but that would have been the fourth one we would have moved forward with. Miguel or Faye, do you have any additions?
No.
Great, thank you. Alejandra or David, would either of you like to share with us your personas?
Yeah, we had a great conversation. We kind of started with young people, a young person, a community passerby, a tourist, and an African-American community member. And then we broke out in detail a college student as sort of a subset of our young people, and an African-American community member. And so we had a really rich discussion about those two personas in particular. Alejandra, any additions?
I think you got it.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you all so much again. As I said before, you will get a similar report as you received from session 1 for this session 2, where Mass and the committee will work together to synthesize the information that we heard. Our next and last session will be on the 23rd, March 23rd, same time, same place. And in that discussion, we will be focusing on intent and form. So I look forward to that conversation, and I will turn it back over to the KC committee to close us out and give us any last words.
I don't hear anyone speaking up. We didn't arrange for this. So I'll do it. This has been a terrific discussion, very, very fruitful and very interesting. Lots of thoughts about the personas, and then lots of programming ideas around all of that. So I am very eager to see the summary and get that all out to you, and then to see you all on the 23rd at 5:30, so that we can continue this conversation through the third question. Thank you all for coming. Dean, would you like to say anything as we close out? I lost you.
I think I'm going to echo what you said. Thank you again for coming, joining us on this journey.
And we look forward to seeing you all on the 23rd.
No, Dean.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
If you
Thanks,
come
everyone.
early, you can weigh in and just chit chat. So we open the door around 5:20.
Yes.
You will,
Right.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Great to
night.
see you. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Buenos nachos.
Buenos nachos. Bye-bye.
So if I
I
end the-
heard it.
if I end the meeting, we're gonna all go away. Are you all okay with that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Joy, where's your recording going to? Did you record to the cloud or to your computer?
Recorded it to the cloud.
Perfect. Okay. See you all soon.
You
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye. Bye, Kathy.